Shalom, friends. Welcome to this week's installment of a Bisselle Torah, a little Torah, to hold us until we get to Shabbat when we read the parasha of Shmini. And this week also brings with it a very special Shabbat called Shabbat Parah, both of which are worthy of extensive examination and rumination, talking about it very deeply. But I'm going to stick to one specific point that's found in the parasha called Shmini this week. The two sons of Aaron, Nadav and Avihu, perish in a Eish Zarah, in a strange fire that they brought to the inner sanctum. They perished, they died, and nobody knows exactly what it is that they did that was wrong. Obviously, Eish Zarah, a strange fire, had no place in the inner sanctum at the Mishkan in the wilderness. They did something clearly that was wrong. But how wrong could it have been? There's some people say that they were drunk. And there are other commentators that say, well, they were just imagining how they would connect with God on a deeper level than just the perfunctory way that their father Aaron had shown them to do. In other words, they were zealous. They wanted to do more than simply give a fire. They wanted to do something better and greater. There are lots of different explanations as to what it is that caused them to perish instantaneously when they offered this fire before God. Something went wrong. Was it their fault? Were they being punished? But here's the key issue that I'd like you to think about for a moment. What about Daddy? What about Father Aaron, who had to deal with the death of his two sons? How does he go on? As they were practicing simply what he had taught them to do, what he had brought them up to do, as the Kohen, as the priest, as the person who would officiate at all of the sacrificial rites, bringing God closer to them and bringing them closer to God. How does Daddy feel now that his two sons have died, doing exactly what he told them to do or thereabouts? How do we deal with death? How does it affect and change us? It is perhaps the one thing that we all have in common with each other. No one goes through this life without experiencing death and how it affects us. For Aaron, the Torah says, Vayidom Aaron. He had nothing to say. He was silent. He was dumbstruck by what had happened, by the loss of his two precious children. And many of us, when we experience death, that is precisely our reaction. We don't know what to say. We don't know what to do. We don't know where to go. We don't know who to talk to. We don't know how to cleanse ourselves of this immense amount of pain. Where to put it. This scarring that is internal. But this was Aaron's reaction. Simply silent. Some people talk. Some people go into a corner. We in the Jewish community comfort one another. In the aftermath of the Holocaust, which was not terribly dissimilar to this, because don't forget the word Holocaust means an offering that was totally consumed, just like the sons of Aaron, totally consumed in a Holocaust and a sacrificial fire. And they too, many of them, were dumbstruck in the aftermath of the Holocaust, the few survivors that made it out of the concentration camps and the terrible persecution that happened then. Many of them did not know how to deal with it and remained silent. Elie Wiesel's famous book, Night, took him a decade to be able to articulate, and he was one of the first people that was able to write anything about his experiences in the Holocaust. So in a sense, the survivors too, Vayidom, and they were all silent. But here's the key issue. Moses comes to confront and ultimately to comfort his brother Aaron. He sees that there is reason to go on. He leads Aaron to the place where he needs to be. Life does not stop for us, the living, when death makes an entrance into our life. We need to learn how to work with that scarring to make us better people. With that internal bleeding, after we've healed and after the community that is supposed to comfort us does precisely what it's supposed to do, comforts us, then we come out of our sequestration, out of our blankness and emptiness of life. And don't necessarily resume living, because we'll never be the same. But we find a new path forward. with hopeful, new energy and insight towards a higher standard of living because we have learned the terrible pain of parting. Shabbat Shalom.